on satellite, on Freeview, on cable, on radio, on mobile, on the web and around the world. This is First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7.
Tonight, hammering away, Global Sri Lanka Forum fires a volley at the UNHRC.
We therefore request the Office of High Commissioner not to behave in an unfair, unjust and inequitable way with regard to Sri Lanka compromising the UN Charter.
More assurance. The President insists Sri Lanka will remain a unitary state. Mission review. IMF hails Inland Revenue Act. Says smooth implementation a challenge.
Policy performance has been fully satisfactory. These are all very encouraging achievements.
And in international headlines, touchdown. North Korean delegation in Russia for nuclear talks. And in sports, good day at the office. The captain leads the way in Sri Lanka's first innings. Good evening to all our viewers across Sri Lanka and around the world. Welcome to First at 9. I'm Mahesh Johnny. We once again begin our coverage tonight in Geneva at the UNHRC. Dr. Nalaka Gudaheva urged the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner not to compromise the organization's charter by treating Sri Lanka unfairly and unjustly. He pressed the global body yesterday in his address during the 36th United Nations regular session held at its headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland.
Dr. Nalaka Gudaheva and retired Rear Admiral Sarath Veerasekara spoke at the 36th Human Rights regular session.
Despite the fact that the UN Charter does not authorize intervention in matters that are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state, the High Commissioner has been repeatedly making references to the need for constitutional reforms and for special tribunals to investigate alleged war crimes in Sri Lanka. His keenness to propose investigations against the Sri Lankan armed forces must extend not only to the dead and gone LTT leadership, but also to those who financed and supported their terrorist activities in the past. The LTT's international network and the local and Tamil Nadu politicians who actively support the LTT should also be held accountable for the thousands of lives lost in Sri Lanka over the last 30 years. They have blood in their hands and they should not be allowed to act as champions of human rights now. The promotion and protection of all human rights should be guided by the principles of impartiality, objectivity and non-selectivity.
When it was commissioned, many prominent countries, including Russia, objected, stating it was not done in accordance with UN procedure. The resolution adopted based on that report permitting the High Commissioner to conduct investigation was again objected by many countries, including India and Pakistan, stating that it was a crass example of hypocrisy and double standard. The final resolution recommending hybrid courts and constitutional changes was based on the seriously flawed and biased OISL report of the High Commissioner. Nowhere in the world an army won a separatist war rescuing 300,000 people. Unfortunately, the present Sri Lankan government, to satisfy the separatist Tamil diaspora, betrayed the nation by co-sponsoring the resolution. The separatists are now trying to achieve what the terrorists could not for 3 decades.
In the meantime, leader of India's political party MDMK, Vaiko, made another statement against Sri Lanka at yesterday's regular session.
Arrest of fishermen detention in Sri Lanka prisons has become the Indian government is not at all concerned about this. In Sri Lanka, due to the genocidal brutal attacks of the armed forces, more than 100,000 Elam Tamils came to Tamil Nadu in India as refugees. The comfort and facilities provided by the United Nations to refugees in other countries are not delivered to these saddened Elam Tamil refugees in India.
President Maithripala Sirisena insists that a constitution which divides the country will not be prepared. He made this assertion addressing the ceremony organized to present the epistle pertaining to the post of the chief prelate of the Udarata Amarapura Samgiri Sangha Sabha, Tripitakacharya Most Venerable Girambe Mangalathera, this evening.
අභිනවයෙන් මහානායක ධූරයට පත්වී වදාළ අද උදේ පුවත්පත්වල මුල් පිටුවේම තිබෙනවා ගෞරවනීය මහානායක ස්වාමීන්ද්‍රයන් වහන්සේලා.
There was a statement in the newspapers this morning given by several venerable chief prelates. It said that the report submitted by political parties on the new constitution contains suggestions to form a new constitution under the concept of United States with devolved power. As soon as I read it, I called President's Counsel Jayampathy Wickramaratne, who is the chief of the constitution preparation process. He ensured that no such thing will be done by them. He said there could be an issue with the explanation given to the prelates. He assured that no such thing is included in the report on the Constitution. I asked him twice if he is telling the truth. He said there is no such thing. Even I haven't received this report, which was presented in Parliament. Today we are a unitary Sri Lanka. We will not include anything veering from that in the Constitution. In addition, clauses pertaining to the place of Buddhism will not be removed or diluted. I clearly say that we will not leave room for a constitution which may divide the country.
මේ රට විනාශ වන ආකාරයට බෙදෙන්න කැඩෙන්න ව්‍යවස්ථාවක් හදන්න අපි ඉඩකඩ තබන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක බොහොම පැහැදිලිව සඳහන් කරන්නට ඕනේ.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe makes evident that the government is in the process of reforming the education system to suit the 21st century. The Premier made this remark at the Smart Classroom pilot project held at the Sri Jayawardhanapura Mahavidyalaya in Kotte today.
The pilot project of the Smart Class program commenced at the Sri Jayawardhanapura Mahavidyalaya this morning. The project aims to educate students with the use of tablets. Free internet facilities are also provided for the program. Our society is knowledge-based. Human resource is the most important resource we have. To improve human resources, we have to improve education. This program should have commenced 5 or 10 years ago. We still don't have computers in most schools in our country. That's why we decided to distribute tablets. When we established the government, there were 3 main things we had to do. Providing good education was one of them. Usually education is tucked between the 2 main parties. When one party discusses to revamp, the other opposes. Since both parties are in this government, this will not be changed again. Parents in particular like this. Although we argue inside the parliament, everyone would like it if we did this. But before doing that, we need to have money. We didn't have money in 2015. Our debt was so heavy, our income wasn't enough to pay it. After alleviating the debt burden and stabilizing the economy, we can launch such projects.
The Government Medical Officers Association warns that they will resort to an unannounced continuous trade union action if the government fails to provide an immediate solution to the SITEM issue. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court today permitted to take up the appeal lodged by the Sri Lanka Medical Council requesting an annulment to the appeals court decision which ordered SITEM medical graduates be registered with the Sri Lanka Medical Council.
The appeal lodged by the Sri Lanka Medical Council seeking an annulment to the appeals court decision which ordered them to register SITEM medical graduates was taken up today before a 3-member Supreme Court bench. Following deliberation, the chair of the bench said the petition will be taken up for hearing with the majority consent of the bench. Accordingly, the case will be taken up on the 21st of November. Sanjay Rajaratnam, representing the Attorney General, is arguing in court that the government's stance has no relevance to this case. Therefore, we requested the President to give necessary instructions to the Attorney General and remind him of the promises made. Some are attempting to pave the way for SITEM to be registered under pretenses. The Central Working Committee yesterday decided to move for an unannounced, continuous mega trade union action. Meanwhile, Minister of Health, Nutrition and Indigenous Medicine Dr. Rajitha Senaratne also spoke on the matter during a function today. I told the GMOA that I'm unafraid. My decisions are based on principles. I may change parties, but will not change principles. There's only one stance on SITEM. All their battle slogans calling for the abolishment of SITEM is useless. After abolishing, where do we end up? If there are issues, they should be addressed and developed. The proposed strike is one which is unsuitable for the country, uncalled for by its people, and attacks the future of the country. Therefore, neither myself nor the people will support the strike.
In other local stories, Dr. Ranga Kalansurya today tendered his resignation as Director General of the Government Information Department. Following his resignation, the senior journalist and founding Director General of the Sri Lanka Press Institute stated on social media that his decision was purely due to personal reasons. Dr. Ranga Kalansurya was appointed to the position on June 6, 2016.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Welcome back everyone on to Business News. The International Monetary Fund commended the Sri Lankan government's progress in achieving quantitative targets through the implementation of stringent policy. Addressing media at the conclusion of IMF's third review of Sri Lanka's economic program, Chief of Mission Jaywood Lee, however, highlighted the need for accelerated pace in implementation of public finance management. Meanwhile, the IMF projects the country's growth to remain below 4.5% this year, despite experiencing severe droughts, and to rebound next year.
Despite these somewhat challenging economic circumstances, policy performance, conduct of fiscal, monetary and reserve accumulation policy has been very strong. In terms of the performance relative to our program agreements, the so-called quantitative targets in June 2017, size of fiscal balance, extent of revenue collection, and the level of international reserves have all met the target, meaning that policy performance has been fully satisfactory.
The Chief of Mission also highlighted a few challenges the government should address.
Together with the overall program of improving government finances, having a bit more systematic debt management strategy will also help. Turning to central bank policies, continuing the recent pace of reserve accumulation will remain very important to ensure that external stability keeps on improving. At the same time, continuing commitment to greater exchange rate flexibility and preparation for transition to flexible inflation targeting also remain very important. Turning to structural reforms, there is a need to somewhat accelerate the pace of implementation in public financial management and reform in SOEs. In particular, pricing reform for fuel and electricity remains to be done.
The mission chief went on to comment on the country's recently passed Inland Revenue Act.
The new Inland Revenue Act should provide a very solid foundation for continuing improvement in government finances, as well as providing a new systematic and transparent tax regime, which we all expected to have far-reaching benefits in terms of promoting private sector activity and providing foundation for generating higher government revenues. The next challenge will be to ensure smooth and effective implementation.
The Hong Kong Trade Development Council to Southeast Asia says that its expertise in the global stage makes them an ideal partner for Sri Lankan businesses to explore partnership opportunities in international trading and manufacturing. The regional director of the Hong Kong Trade Development Council to Southeast Asia, Peter Wong, said that Sri Lankan business can expand into other industries and reach different markets, also keeping in mind that Hong Kong is the gateway to China. He expressed these views addressing a seminar organized by the HKTCD and Export Development Board of Sri Lanka, targeting Sri Lanka's businesses and entrepreneurs in Colombo today.
The seminar was held for the third time in Colombo to raise awareness of local entrepreneurs and businessmen on making Hong Kong a platform for global business expansion. It was highlighted in the conference that in terms of bilateral trade, Hong Kong's imports to Sri Lanka rose 8% year-on-year to $78 million in the first 7 months of this year.
Chinese mainland Belt and Road Initiative, so a lot of the Chinese investors are looking for investment opportunities in Sri Lanka, especially on the infrastructure perspective, manufacturing perspective, and also logistics. So there are quite a number of good opportunities for the investors to come to Sri Lanka. And what we're trying to do is to provide a platform for all over the world investors to come over and make use of Hong Kong platform, to invest in Sri Lanka.
One of the major advantages of Hong Kong is its low tax regime, 16.5% for profit tax and 15% for salary tax. Hong Kong has also been voted as the world's freest economy for 22 consecutive years.
When inquired as to what measures can be taken to attract more investors to Sri Lanka, Regional Director Peter Wong had this to say.
Of course, there are some areas that Sri Lanka can improve. Foremost important one is still infrastructure. I think connectivity is very important. If you are better linked between cities in Sri Lanka, I think there will be a more easy way of doing business.
Let's take you to the stock market now. Colombo equities managed to close the week on a positive note with both indices gaining. The all-share price index added 4.70 to close at 6,438.24, while the S&P SL20 index closed at 3,694.78, up 11.89 points. Turnover was around 782 million rupees, with top contributions from Lion Brewery and Commercial Bank, driven by foreign inflows. Meanwhile, foreign investors were net buyers of 188 million rupees worth of shares. We now take a look at how the Colombo Bourse performed this week.
Diversified sector recorded the highest sector turnover during the week. Meanwhile, the second highest was seen in banks, finance and insurance sector. Foreigners remained active for the week, where foreign purchasers accounted for 41% of the total weekly turnover. Out of the weekly turnover, block trades accounted for 24%, which was lower than last week.
You are watching Sri Lanka's trusted news brand, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back everyone on to international news. A solution to the rambling North Korean nuclear issue might be possible after all. Reuters reports that a North Korean delegation arrived at the Russian Foreign Ministry in Moscow today for talks on the nuclear crisis. The United States welcomed the planning meeting, with the U.S. State Department issuing a statement. Privately, however, U.S. officials have played down the likely effect of the Russian effort. Recent days have seen exchanges of heated rhetoric and threats between U.S. President Donald Trump's administration and North Korea over the latter's bid to develop nuclear-tipped missiles capable of hitting the United States. Meanwhile, thousands of people have been evacuated on the Indonesian island of Bali and the Amber Island in Vanuatu as two volcanoes threaten to erupt. With that, let's take a look at some other stories making news from across the world.
More than 144,000 people on the island of Bali are taken to shelters as authorities warn that Mount Agung in the island's north could erupt at any time. The entire population of Ombai is being moved from the path of the increasingly active Merano volcano. Both volcanoes sit on the Pacific Ring of Fire, an area of intense seismic activity that stretches 40,000 kilometers from New Zealand to South America. Meanwhile, Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina calls on the international community to provide them with aid with country's efforts to shelter more than 500,000 Rohingya refugees. Situation reports from Cox's Bazar estimate that over 106,000 children are without education services, 429,000 people require food, and 470,000 people do not have shelter. A rush-hour stampede during a sudden monsoon downpour at Elphinstone railway station in Mumbai killed at least 22 people and wounded more than 30 today. The stampede took place after the cloudburst caught commuters off guard, prompting scores to scurry for cover.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
Well, Sri Lanka posted a daunting 411 in their first innings against Pakistan during the second day of the first test played in the UAE. Receiving from an overnight score of 227 for 4 wickets, Captain Dinesh Chandimal led the way with a commendable unbeaten 155. Pakistan, however, ended the day on 64 for no loss.
He batted superbly.
The unbeaten duo from yesterday, skipper Dinesh Chandimal and Niroshan Dickwella, started from where they left off. Dickwella was the first to go for 83, ending a stand of 134. Dilruwan Pereira also assisted Chandimal with a vital 33. After his departure, Chandimal soon ran out of partners and stood unbeaten on 155 at the end of Sri Lanka's first innings.
Go down as one of his finest.
With little play left, Pakistan navigated their way carefully to be on 64 for no loss at stumps.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Good evening and welcome to the Weather Centre. Now, the central hills of the island is set to experience much cooler weather as the map shows, with the temperatures in the northern and eastern regions are forecast to go beyond 30 degrees Celsius. Now, several spells of light showers will occur in the western, Sabaragamuwa and central hills and in the Galle and Matra districts. Meanwhile, the Ua province and Ampara and Batticaloa districts may experience some showers or thunder showers. Now, let's take a look at your city-by-city forecast.
I'm Mahesh Johnny. Enjoy the weekend. Good night.